In the months since The Girls Who Went Away was published, I have received hundreds of emails from readers whose lives were affected by events like those chronicled in the book. About half of the letters were from surrendering mothers who, though not interviewed, felt their stories had nonetheless been told. Adoptees were the second largest group to respond. Most said reading the stories helped them to better understand their mother and their social pressures of the time. Others who wrote to attest to experiencing a similar fear of intimacy and a sense of loss. Women who came of age in the 1950s and 60s wrote to reflect on how they might easily have been one of the girls, and had it not been for dumb luck. Many recalled women they had known who went away, and several vowed to locate a former classmate to apologize for their lack of compassion at the time. I also heard from a few women who surrendered babies more recently. One felt she was stigmatized for placing her baby for adoption at a time when it was so common for a single woman to raise children. Another reported that despite having more involvement in the adoption process, the feelings of loss and guilt were similar. She felt that even within her conservative community, the sense of shame was no different than in the 50s and 60s. And despite the fact that she was in her 20s and a college graduate, she was pushed strongly toward adoption. She did not respond when I asked for permission to reprint her email. Perhaps it is this shame that led her to silence. It did for generations of women before her. I was deeply moved by the letters from brothers, sisters, subsequent children, cousins, and friends of surrendering mothers, as well as the notes sent from adoptee spouses and adoptive parents. As I read these letters, I was saddened by the longing for those who are still trying to connect, but heartened by the compassion expressed by so many caring people. Dear Anne, my name is Richard, and I'm 63, a retired elementary school teacher, now living in Florida. Recently, in talking to my 61-year-old sister in Indiana, she mentioned a review of your book. I bought her a copy, and we began reading it at the same time. I hoped, amongst all of the stories, she would find her own. I told her if that happened upon finishing, she would write an inscription to send the book to the daughter she put up for adoption back in '65. I felt, by book's end, that her daughter must read this book in order to have a much better understanding of the time period, and why so many very young women found themselves in what was essentially a hopeless, no-win, heartbreaking situation. I've also ordered copies for my two other sisters and had them sent with a note saying it was time to celebrate our sister's bravery. My sister married in the 70s, and to my knowledge, she never told her husband that she had a child before meeting him. He has since passed away. They never had any children of their own. Some years back, she received a call from Catholic Charities and was told her daughter would like to contact her. In the years since, they've continued to talk, and she has met her daughter's husband and her 3 girls, her grandchildren. My sister and all of these girls, over so many years, were abused by a system that did not have too much concern for the well-being of the birth mother. Had the same energies had found a home for these babies, gone instead into finding a way to help many of the women, these girls, keep and raise their own babies, how much better off so many of them would have been. I now had a whole new loving way to view that my sister went through. This is a topic that needs to be talked of, and talked in the most non-judgmental way possible. Richard. So, just pausing there, I just want to say, unfortunately, this is still happening in terms of the money aspect. Is being pushed towards adoption, and instead of helping women raise their babies, we're pushing adoption, or, adoption as a choice for infertile women, on the adoptive parent side. And it's not good for any of those that are involved. Truly. It's very rare that safe external care is necessary, right? And even when it is extremely traumatic on all parties. and we have to remember that. But we could help so many more people if we actually put the time and the energy and the money where it belongs, instead of pushing this saviorism complex. Okay, anyway. Continuing on, Professor Fessler, I went out today at lunch to buy your book, hoping it will give me some insight as to what my mother went through. She died a few years ago on her 70th birthday. When she was in the hospital, delirious and hallucinating from a serious infection, I learned that my mother was one of the women you write about. She spent hours crying and begging, "Bring me my baby." When she regained consciousness, she did not recall telling me anything, but I spoke with her about it, and she did, in a very few words, confirm her ordeal. She was weak and very sick. I was never able to get more information before she passed. In that moment at the hospital, her entire life made sense to me. She was a woman who had a sense of sadness and longing her whole life. It burdens me beyond comprehension to think of her sadness and despair, and to never being able to speak of it or share it with anyone. Marie. Hello, Anne. I'm listening to your interview with Diane Rem and feeling waves of emotion sweeping through my spirit. I need to find my daughter. The most I could get from the Catholic priest who arranged for my girlfriend to go to California in 1968 was that the baby was a girl and was born on March 4th or 5th. He told me he wasn't sure, but I've long believed it was a way to keep me from finding this child. I was 20 at the time, and my girlfriend was 21. I have not learned anything about the baby other than what the priest told me. From time to time over the years, I've attempted to find her, and I am still very interested in finding her, to know that she is okay, to learn what kind of life she had, and if she has thought of me, or thought to look for me. At the time, I was a student at a Catholic college, and I lived with my parents. My parents were hysterical over this, threatened to cut me from their wills, even throwing me out of the house a number of times over the course of several months. I developed a severe case of shingles from the stress of it all, but that was seen as part of my punishment. I don't have a first name. A date of birth I have is questionable. I've run out of leads. David. So, unfortunately, so often, birth dads are not talked about, and I think that they should be. A lot of the times, birth dads don't even know that the child exists, which it's truly sad. But even when they do, it's like they're usually not the one that's punished, at least by society, right? And I feel like it's unfair for the father to not be able to find the child. Okay, continuing on. Dear Anne, I have loved a man for the past 10 years, a child born to a girl who went away. Thoughts are tumbling, a lump in my throat. I'm finding it difficult to put feelings into words. He found her recently, a whole family, a full brother. I went with him to meet them. There are no words, only lovely tears. He has incredible similarities to some of the women in your book. Inability to attach to people who love him, to commit, to feel at home, always feeling like he doesn't fit in. Ooh, that feels like me. It has been a struggle for him his whole life. We lay in bed this afternoon, each reading our own copy of your book. We have shared many books in our time together. Never one like this. Sincerely, Ellen. Dear Anne, in the mid-60s, I was living in the suburb of St. Paul when a cousin who was a lieutenant in the Navy appeared on my doorstep with one suitcase and very pregnant. Since I am a gay male, she evidently thought I would offer a safe refuge since we both had an unspeakable secret. At the time, I had an efficiency apartment, so that means no bedroom. We had grown up together. Our mothers were sisters. While she was there, we had our laughs and we did our share of crying, yet we survived. Those days harbored a cruel society, but we made the most of what we had. Every day, my pregnant cousin greeted the mailman, hoping he would bring a letter from the baby's father saying he would marry her. The baby was given up for adoption, and the mother returned to northern Wisconsin to take a teaching position. Her parents never knew what happened. I moved back to Wisconsin 5 years later, but during the subsequent 40 years, my cousin never mentioned her situation, and I never brought it up. I always figured that all was well, and she had forgotten about it. Alas, that was not the case. She gave me your book, and finally, we're talking about it again. An interesting aside is that during these years, she had been understanding and supportive of my sexual orientation, and has helped me to accept myself as the person I really am. I've learned that good can come from many sources, even from devastating circumstances. Sincerely yours, Ronald. Wow. Oh, God. Okay, continuing on. Dear Mrs. Fessler, I am 52. Sorry, dear Miss Fessler. I am 52, and my birth mother was a 22-year-old college student when she was pregnant with me. No one knew she was pregnant. She got hooked up with a doctor who told her of a couple who needed someone to help them with their baby. My mother lived with my adoptive parents from the time she was about 4 or 5 months pregnant until about a week after she gave birth. She did not know that my parents were going to adopt the baby she was carrying. Okay, see, this makes it so much ickier, because I've heard these stories, and it is vulturous, right? Where it's, oh, I'll help you in the moment, and then they snatch the baby, right? It's under false pretenses. It's gross. Anyway, continuing on. I contacted her in 1991, and she wasn't very happy to hear from me. She was very ashamed of getting pregnant. Even at 60 years of age, she felt she couldn't tell her brother and her sister. She feared they would judge her harshly. But she sent me pictures of my 3 half-sisters and told me her pregnancy and my relinquishment. In 1998, I wrote her a letter if she had changed her mind about telling her daughters about my existence. 11 days later, my younger sister called me. My mother had died of lung cancer in 1996. Oh my God. My new relatives tell me I have many of my mother's mannerisms, and I now understand where I get my temperament. Finally, I can look at someone who looks like me. My sisters tell me I am the greatest gift our mother could have given them. I feel truly blessed. Yours very truly, Sharon. Sorry, I'm gonna cry. So first of all, I'm so glad that Sharon was able to reconnect or to connect with her half-sisters. It's very sad that their birth mom really didn't want much, but centering myself for a moment, I have 3 half-siblings myself, 2 older half-siblings and 1 younger half-brother, and I don't think they'll ever know me or ever know I even exist, and that hurts. It hurts because I'll never get to talk to them. I'll never get to make memories with them. I'll never truly get to know them. And it's sad. Dear Anne, I adopted a baby boy in 1969. I too was given only a little information from the private agency that placed him with us. I did ask if his mother received counseling before and after his birth. I was told she had, but later learned she had not. I was thrilled with my son and to finally be a mother after numerous failed pregnancies. He was an answer to many prayers and deals I had made with God. Oh, I'm sorry. I hate those. You're a gift from God. We prayed you into our existence. We prayed you into our family. Sorry. I know that sounds awful, but this is it. The adoptive parents, the hopeful adoptive parents, these infertile couples are preyed upon about, this is their answer to being a family with children, right? Okay, sorry, continuing on. As his first birthday approached, I found that I was very sad and thought of his other mother all the time. On the actual day, I cried and I had only a hint of what she must have felt that day. The same thing happened the next year, and I thought of her on every birthday after. My son Eric knew very little that he was adopted. I cut the nonsense about being selected. Good. That's good. He was told that I could not have a baby, and his other mother was very young and could not care for him. During the years, he asked a few questions, but I told him that if he ever wanted to meet his other mother, I would help. Okay, so it sounds like this adoptive mom is doing something good. Not fully, but during the time, I get it. Okay, so just saying. All right, continuing on. He found her around his 35th birthday. He was married, the father of 2 girls, and knew how important a medical history was for himself and now for his daughters. He had lost 2 friends to cancer and 1 to a brain embolism. He contacted the agency and wrote her a letter. She responded immediately. In March of 2005, he met Kay and her 3 children. I met her 2 weeks after he did. Kay has since stayed with me when I traveled to California. We always get together. So much of what she told me is echoed in your book. Her biggest fear was that he had never been adopted. My heart goes out to Kay in so many different ways. I know how lucky I am to have raised a beautiful baby boy into a thoughtful, funny, really nice guy and darn handsome man that I can call my son. She has said several times that she could never have given him the life he had with me. And I know that it's true, but at what a price? For the woman that becomes a mother through adoption, it is easy to forget the price someone else paid. Ooh, that is a good line. I want Kay and Eric to have a mother-son relationship for as long as they possibly can. Marie. I'm sorry. I'm gonna cry. At what price, right? That's what she said. Yeah, it's not just what the birth mother goes through, which is what this book focuses on, but we constantly talk about what the child endures, the adoptee, right? It is a price. And typically, right, 99% are at a terrible price. And I mean price as in there's trauma, the bad experiences, and all sorts of stuff, right? Not talking actual dollar bill price. But yeah, that's tough. Anyway, thank you guys all for listening, and I will continue doing the readings. I'm sorry I've slowed down. Things have come up, but we are back, and I will catch up with the readings. Thank you.